right? And he was talking about how it was so outside of his own control. And like, this just happens to me. It's not something that I have the ability to reach over and grab the dial and turn it anywhere. And so we ran an experiment, which you're familiar with. You know, a lot of times we'll do that in SFBT. Mm-hmm. And so in Solution Focused Brief Therapy, we said, okay, tell you what, I need you, what's your anxiety at right now? And he was like, it's at like a 7, man. It's really, really rough. I said, okay, I need you to get it to an 8. Mm-hmm. And he was like, wait, what? And I was like, no, I need you to get it up. I need you to get it to an 8. Well, how do I do that? Well, do more of whatever the hell you're doing. Like, you know, what are you scared of? Can you tell me that right now? Can you tell me what you're feeling? Well, yeah, I'm feeling this. I'm thinking about this. I'm fixating on this. And I have all these fears. It's like a cascade. Okay, great. Add to that. I need you to get a dozen more of those things flying at you. I need you to grab a few more of those and grab them and look at them. And it was a fascinating thing because, of course, the anxiety comes down. Like, it starts to tick down. And it's interesting because what we learn by doing that is to not fear the feeling and to reach out and grab the knob. And the truth is, if you can turn the volume from a 7 to an 8, if you can look into your depression and you notice that by dwelling on it, by fixating on it, by going through the thought, by visually and vividly imagining it, you can get yourself sadder. What you're teaching yourself is that you actually do have the ability to reach for the volume knob. Right. And I think that works both ways.
Yeah. I used to do something similar in residential treatment. Where instead of doing like an intensity, instead of raising the intensity, what I do is I'd have them sit and keep the intensity
right where it's at
for an hour. Because inevitably what would happen is they would do that for, 25 minutes, 30 minutes.
It's exhausting.
And then be like, okay, I'm
sorry, I'm losing
my
it.
anxiety's starting to come down. I'm like, no,
get it up.
An hour. We agreed 60 minutes. You got to find some way, get that anxiety back up there,
right?
But yeah, you ultimately are teaching that same thing. When you put some kind of number to it, something that you have to do to maintain it, then it gives you that control element. Like, oh, I'm not completely a victim here.
Right.
I can manipulate certain things that will make the situation better or worse.
Yes. And so if you're out there and whatever your symptom, to the writer, he's talking about sadness. If your experience is anxiety, if your experience is anger, if your experience is jealousy, whatever emotion, whatever thing that you're staring into that causes you discomfort, there may be times when there's a part of you that really wants to just explore the feeling. And you're just sitting there with the air running in your car during your lunch break, really just fantasizing about your anger or just really seeping in it or just feeling that anxiety or feeling that sadness or imagining something scary and just going with the thought. I'm comfortable with that. Now, going back to what Nick had said about where we're going to draw that boundary, if we're starting to think about, as Nick said, lethality, so you might be thinking about hurting somebody else or you might be thinking about hurting yourself. At that point, I'm going to tell you, I'd like to know about it. As your therapist, that's where I need you to go ahead and let me know. Sometimes I dive pretty deep in the well of this emotion. And Jim, to tell you the truth, here's something I find down there sometimes. Okay, great. Let me be the one who gets to decide whether I need to reach down there and pull you out. But if you are therapeutically gaining from the experience, as long as you have a spotter, somebody who's watching over you, I'm fine with it. I really am. And I think there can be a lot of therapeutic value to that too.
Absolutely. And one thing that the writer says too, the last sentence here, I want to jump back to that. Is it bad to allow my emotions to win from time to time? So the writer is talking about when they feel hurt or sad to just basically go in, cry for a while, and then move on.
Yeah.
And I would argue, the person saying, is it bad to allow my emotions to win from time to time? I would say, you're actually not allowing your emotions to win. I think that's the point.
Right.
Like, what ultimately is happening is your emotions are coming out when you allow them to come out.
Yes.
So the emotions aren't winning. You are learning to maintain and have control over that.
Yes.
So you're choosing to let yourself have a good cry for 15, 20 minutes.
Right.
Like that, so that's awesome.
It is. And what's interesting though is like, if this person had family or friends or a spouse, and that person's family, friend, or spouse saw them doing this, I can see that person's family freaking out and dragging them to therapy and saying, oh my gosh, my person is uncomfortable, fix them, help them. And I think if I evaluated them and got to see some of what they're talking about, I might say, you know what, this is fine. I like what you're doing. I'm here to look over it. This is okay, but I think other people can really be startled by it. But I want to back up what you just said. The emotion isn't winning. The emotion is being processed on your terms in a controlled manner. And no significant amount of distress is being caused. I can't look in your life and see fingerprints of where problems are arising and brokenness is happening. And so I think that this is really meaningful. There's a lot of people that think that you've achieved therapeutic zen whenever you become Spock and like you're all logic, no emotion, all rationality. You cannot be startled. You cannot be budged. Somebody could fire off a starter pistol next to your ear and you wouldn't even flinch. And like, that's not it. Like the goal is not roboticism. Like the goal is balance. The goal is healthy, mature processing of reality, life on life's terms without abreaction. Abreaction is just dysfunctional behavior, everything falling apart because you don't have a good amount of control. So that's the real goal of therapy. But too often, Nick, people think that our goal is to like deprogram them so that they don't feel anything at all. And they just go through life like listless and blank.
Yeah. No, you're going to have just as much emotion as you did before.
Right. Yeah.
You just learn control and you get to decide.
Yeah, and I would argue this is a form of control.
Absolutely. And I think this also is going to benefit in the creation of further coping skills. Like, and this is one thing that I know my clients get sick of hearing me say is to be grateful.
Right.
When things don't go right.
Mm-hmm.
Because when things don't go right, that means that you have to develop a coping skill to deal with that thing that didn't go right.
Right.
So at the end, what are you left with? You're left with one more coping skill that you didn't have before.
Yeah, I can see where that would get annoying.
Yeah.
You sound like the military. This is an opportunity, gentlemen.
Pain is weakness leaving the body.
The only thing to fear is fear itself.
All right, we're going to go ahead and take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to answer some more listener mail about finding a good therapist. You're listening to Pod Therapy. Hey, TheraPals, have you purchased your tickets to Scoop Fest 2018 yet? Jim, have you?
Scoop Fest! Yes, I have.
Have you?
No, I have not. Thanks for putting me on the spot.
Gotcha.
But now I'm going to go to heyscoops.com/therapy.
So our friends Matt, Paul, and Jacob are working hard putting together the 3rd annual weekend-long comedy and podcast festival in beautiful Las Vegas, Nevada, October 12th, 13th, and 14th. Enjoy live comedy variety shows, the Scoop Talent Show, the Jock vs. Nerd Costume Ball,
free beer,
and much, much more. I don't think there's free beer. I don't know. We'll see. And you will get to hear live recordings of your favorite podcasts, such as Matt Mattingly's Ice Cream Social, Pod Therapy, yours truly, the Piff Pod, so Piff the Magic Dragon, Penn Sunday School, Night Attack.
Yeah.
I'm doing this all from memory.
One Player? Player One?
Player One podcast.
Yeah.
Last Podcast on the Left. Smart Mouths.
All the good ones. All the good ones.
Yeah. It's going to be really good. So, please.
And you can join us for sushi, psychology, and sake.
Yes, which we're going to schedule. We've had listeners asking about that. We're going to schedule that. We just got to figure it out when.
We'll get to it.
Yeah,
but you can join us only if you buy a freaking ticket. So come to Las Vegas.
So, tickets at heyscoops.com/therapy to get a $40 off discount.
heyscoops.com/therapy. We're back. You're listening to Pod Therapy. Our next listener writes in asking, how the heck do you find a good rehab? All right, here's the question. How do you find good treatment centers or therapists? I have a family member that needs treatment. After hearing your episode about John Oliver's treatment and shady rehabs, I was wondering, how do you know if a rehab is trustworthy or not? And for that matter, how can you tell whether a therapist is good or not? They all advertise as if they're awesome. That's a really good question.
That is a great question.
I'm kind of scared of that question.
I know.
I feel like it was kind of aimed at me. Is it weird that I'm defensive? Is that weird? Does that say more about me? I mean, what are you trying to say, listener?
Yeah, anytime you see Sin City shrink, just stay away from it. Yeah, no, that's a great question because it brings up a really good point, which is that, okay, and this is kind of funny. So I was at my gym the other night.
Me?
No.
Oh.
my working out gym.
Oh, okay. Yeah, not your podcasting gym. Yeah.
Lift heavy stuff.
Yeah, got it.
So there was a guy in there sitting down on his laptop just typing away some stuff. And so I kind of struck up a conversation with him. And because I asked him, I was like, do you work here? And he's like, well, I work for this, not this particular gym, but for this branch of gyms.
Okay.
And he's like, I'm just going on and I'm doing reviews on Google for this gym.
Oh, he's doing reviews?
As in, like, he is going in and he's making up fake names to boost the ratings of the gym.
Yeah.
Now, if your local gym does that, I'm sure treatment centers do that.
Yeah.
And this brings up a big point, which is it's really difficult to get a good sense of what is going to be a good treatment center. Because as well as you have some of those fake reviews, you're also going to have some reviews from people who
are real. They really were there.
But for some reason they got kicked out.
Right.
And
the negative ones you can always trust are real. Right. There's no question those are real. But it's also like, is that the best data, right? Because they were motivated enough to do a review because they're pissed, and they were getting therapy.
and did they not play a part in what happened?
That's a really good question.
And the other thing too is like if a local restaurant chain gets a bad review, they can jump on and they can comment on it, and they say, "Hey, we're sorry you had this experience. Come, we're doing better and we're going to change some stuff. Thank you for your feedback, blah, blah, blah." And they can try to address that. Treatment centers can't do that. Right.
Because if you leave a bad review and you say, "Hi, I'm Nick. I had a really bad time. They did not have good food and I was there for methamphetamine use and I was unhappy." If I, the treatment center, respond and I say, "Hey, Nick, it's Dr. Jobin, man. I'm sorry you had such a bad time. Hope you stay off meth." I've just confirmed that you were there.
And you just broke confidentiality.
I broke confidentiality. Yeah. So like my hands are kind of tied on the internet, ironically, even though you're the one saying bad things about me. Yeah. So I kind of feel for the treatment providers in that sense.
So what do you think, Jim?
Okay. So the question I think is answered easily enough. If we're talking about a hospital, or if we're talking about a facility or a rehab, I'll tell you this right now. I've been an insider for years. They're usually not true. If it's a bad review, of course that's real. If they are good reviews, it's possible that they're real because lots of people do tend to leave good reviews, but whenever they graduate from rehab, they're not super duper motivated to turn around and post that online, because if it's a true review, they're usually going to have to put their own name and face on there, and they don't probably want to do that, right? So usually you end up hiring a reputation management firm who does a lot of this for you and actually puts it all on there. If it's a Google review, I don't trust it from the jump. Okay, I just don't even bother trusting it. If it's a Yelp review, I usually do. If it's something from like rehabs.com or something, don't trust them, right? Because that company sells the idea of posting reviews. It's not, some people are going to post reviews. Sometimes they're real, sometimes they're not. If you're even barely questioning this, don't bother trusting it. I say go to Yelp. So Yelp is real, but the other side of the argument is that going to give you an accurate description of the place, right? Because if people leave bad reviews, and I've had this happen where people leave bad reviews on me, and I'm really frustrated because that person flunked out because they smuggled drugs into my rehab and I kicked them out for it. That means I'm a good rehab, not a bad rehab. But they'll post and go, "Oh, this guy's a jerk."
He wouldn't let me shoot heroin.
Yeah, he wouldn't let me use my drugs. Like they don't ever mention the part where they broke all the rules and committed assault, but they'll say, "This guy was very mean to me and I don't think he's serious at all, and they're just in it for the money," and blah, blah, blah. So, I say go through the website. I think if you're talking about a rehab or a mental health hospital, you need to have faces. I never like it when a company doesn't have real faces or names of their actual therapists. When I see real names and faces, I can trust that those are real people in the community. Another thing is, do they have a third-party credential, like JCAHO, the Joint Commission of Accreditation? If they've earned a standard like that, whether they're nice people or not, they're good at what they do. They had to be and meet minimum standards in order to get those credentials. So I think that's meaningful. Now, on to this other point about Yelp, though. So for years, I didn't know that I had a Yelp. And one day, I'm sitting with a brand new client in my private practice, and I say, "Oh, how did you find me, by the way?" And he says, "Oh, Yelp. I found you on Yelp." And I was like, what is a Yelp? And he was like, "Yelp is a review website. You have reviews. You're on there." And I was like, "What?" So I freaked out and immediately got my phone, downloaded Yelp, and looked myself up. I had 4 reviews. Thank God they were all 5-star. They were 5-star, and people were like, "I really like Jim. He's a great guy." And I was like, what? I had no idea this thing existed, and it terrified me, right? Because I was like, I have no control over this. This is really scary. But it did turn out to be good. And one of the things I've learned as a therapist, there's a big debate amongst therapists of should you even put yourself out there? Like, should you invite people to leave reviews on you? What should you do? I do it. I'm very encouraging. I send my Yelp link now to all of